Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Sunday, October 8th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Purdue game is in 6 days. Everyone's excited about that one, I know. The game against Michigan in 48 days. Everyone is excited about that one, I know. Ohio State is now 5-0. They just beat Maryland 37-17 at Ohio Stadium. I'm joined by Kevin Noon of BuckeyeHuddle.com. And Kevin, it's so strange. You and Tony Gerderman and I all picked almost exactly the right score. I think my score was off by a total of 6 points, and I was the furthest off of any of us. So it was exactly the game we were expecting, except you got there in the weirdest, most unexpected way you possibly could arrive at that final score.
Yeah, I was off by 1 point. If we're really doing Price is Right rules, I guess I went over, saying 38-17. It was a strange day. After the first quarter, I tweeted out, just flush that quarter down the toilet. Ohio State made some corrections, it appeared, at least in execution in the second half of the game. But sack-adjusted rush yardage was, there was next to zero for Ohio State. They couldn't really run the ball. No Trevion Henderson in the game. Kyle McCord had a down and up-ish type of game. I mean, he still threw for over 300 yards, which again just kind of shows what happens when you get some run and catch out there as well. But on to 5-0. You're 5-0 now. Now you get ready for Purdue, and then you got Penn State on the other side of that. And we certainly saw in Buckeye Weekly after the game that people are quite concerned about that one.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to be concerned because I don't think this is an Ohio State team that has shown that it is a complete finished product by any means, and that's probably not realistic to expect on October 7th that that's where your team's going to be. The defense looks pretty good. I mean, let's start with the good news. The defense looks pretty darn good. They gave up a 30-yard touchdown drive to start the game after a weird special teams play that was not a fake punt, not a poorly executed fake punt. It was just apparently a bad snap.
Just a poorly executed special teams play.
Regular punt, yes, that turned into almost looking like a fake punt. Then they hold on downs the next drive, give up a field goal, and after that, in the last essentially 43 minutes of the game, they gave up one touchdown drive to Maryland out of the half. And that was it, and 7 points. And it felt like Ohio State's down 10-0 at one point, and it felt like, oh boy, if they don't get something changed soon, this could really spiral. And then the defense, from that point on, the defense played net zero. They scored 7 points on a pick six by Josh Proctor, and they gave up exactly 7 points.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody's going to sit there and say that the defense played a perfect game. I think that there's some concerns about the linebacker position, coming off of its second subpar week. But overall, I mean, I felt that the secondary played very well. Maybe we didn't see the sacks once again. Stop me if you've heard this before, but we didn't see the sacks. We did see some pressuring out there, and I think that they did an okay job in terms of trying to wrangle Talia. They started to tee off on him a little bit more down toward the end of the game once Maryland really had to kind of abandon the run and just kind of focus on throwing to stay in the game. But I was very impressed with what I saw out of the secondary, more or less. I think that Denzel Burke had a very good game. You still had solid games out of Jordan Hancock, out of Davison Igbinosun. You go into the safety play. I mean, Sonny Styles looked really good out there. I mean, Lathan Ransom, all he does these days, he's 155 pounds of anger out there or something. And he's bigger than 155, but he's been playing his best football while in the scarlet and gray. I think that the secondary play needs to be commended because they really kind of answered the call.
They did. And, this is another veteran quarterback who has, Talia Tagovailoa is not necessarily his brother. He's, but he's a good veteran college quarterback. He is, I put him in maybe the same kind of bucket as Sam Hartman, where this guy's been doing this for long enough, and they're different players, but this guy's been doing this long enough, and the stats show, okay, he knows what he's doing, and you're not going to surprise him that much. You're at the point where you've kind of seen everything at this, by now. And he finishes completing 51% of his passes and averaging less than 5 yards per attempt, and 1 touchdown, 2 picks. For a defense that has just gotten gashed so many times over the previous years, it is starting to feel a little bit real that, hey, this team really is not getting, they don't have the same issues that we've seen over and over and over with Ohio State defenses.
I mean, cutting out the first two games, Taven Jackson for Indiana, whoever it was for Youngstown State. Look at the quarterbacks they played. Austin Reed at Western Kentucky, Sam Hartman at Notre Dame, and then Talia Tagovailoa for Maryland. I mean, Ohio State has gone against some dudes. I mean, there's still a couple other dudes on the schedule. I mean, one of them is a freshman dude in terms of Drew Allard at Penn State. Another one is got 2 wins over them, and that dude up north with J.J. McCarthy. But Ohio State, whatever you're going to say, it's not that Ohio State hasn't faced some quarterbacks. And I think that that's all going to be very important for the confidence of this secondary moving forward, because they've been able to answer the bell. And next week they're going to face Hudson Card from Purdue unless something changes there. And I think Hudson Card, this is a good preparation, because Hudson Card's a guy who can throw for 300 yards, and then Purdue could still score 10 points. I mean, so it's really encouraging to see where this Knowles-led defense has evolved to. And no, it's not been perfect. I mean, there were a couple times where Maryland was able to pick up Ohio State's blitz and throw it where the blitzers vacated, but you're going to have that. For a team in Maryland that prides itself on at least 12 big plays a game, there weren't 12 big plays in the game.
No rushes of 20 yards, no passes of 30 yards. That's, if you do that and you're playing a team that expects to have explosive plays, the offense doesn't work. That's, if you are, it's like a team that relies on the run. Well, if you stop the run, then you're getting them. Now you have to play left-handed, and that's not the way they want to play, and it's not the way they look comfortable playing. And the secondary, you talked about a bunch, how good the secondary looked. Josh Proctor, huge play. That pick six is the bar is pretty high after the last 30 seconds or so at Notre Dame, but that pick six by Josh Proctor was one of the biggest momentum plays you can remember, because Ohio State was not just down, Ohio State had gotten the ball to start the game. They were down 10-0. Maryland had the ball again. Maryland's getting the ball again after halftime. That was a situation where even if Ohio State scores a half for touchdown in the first half, that could be 24-7 at the middle of the third quarter. So to be down 10-7, Maryland's got the ball, you get a pick six, completely swung the momentum of that game. At that moment, it was just the momentum bar swung from the far end at one to the far end at the other.
After 2 drives, I think Ohio State had 26 yards of total offense. After 3 drives, Ohio State had 46 yards of total offense. It was just not going. We hear so much about sometimes the defense is going to have to win games. Well, the defense certainly won the game because, yes, the offense woke up largely-ish in the second half, but we may have never gotten to that part of the book if it wasn't for what Josh Proctor did out there. I mean, really, if Ohio State ends up putting it together and has a special season, that's going to be one of the plays that is going to be a play of the season, in my opinion, because it all could have come apart very easily in this game.
Now, to the offensive side of the ball, and you are not getting the Ohio State defense you're used to seeing, and that's a good thing. You're also not getting the Ohio State offense you're used to seeing, and that's not necessarily a good thing.
I saw it in 2011.
Yeah, the first half was a throwback to lots of seasons that Ohio State fans probably don't want to remember. The offensive line continues to, I don't think the offensive line is a solved issue, let's put it that way. No Travion Henderson on Saturday, so now the running game, you lose your explosive back and you're just sort of grinding it out 3 yards at a time. Kyle McCord had a rough first half and bounced back and had a really solid second half. How big of a concern is the offense, and what of the offense is the biggest concern to you?
How big of a concern? Large. What is the biggest concern? Most of it. I know that's not a great answer there, but
a very encouraging one.
But that's a truthful answer. That is a truthful answer, because which came first, the chicken or the egg? Which is the bigger problem? Protecting Kyle McCord so he has confidence to go through his reads and make these decisions, or Kyle McCord still being a youngish quarterback in terms of his amount of football played at the collegiate level, and those decisions not coming together. And there certainly were times where the line failed him and he was either sped up or he was hit or he was sacked. But there were also times that Kyle did not even when Maryland sent 3 and dropped 8, he ran himself into a position of where he could only target one guy just because of where he was and where the momentum was taking him, and everything else that was across the field would have been a throw that few NFL quarterbacks could make. So I think that as I talk myself through this, I still think that it's Kyle's decision making. Yes, the offensive line play is not anywhere where it needs to be, but I certainly have seen quarterbacks through the years that have been able to kind of get through some of those issues, and we haven't seen Kyle get there yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's still game 5. That was game 5 of the season, so you're about halfway through the regular season. After next week, boy, that's good. That's jarring to say. After next week's game at Purdue,
and then they could be bowl eligible.
You're halfway through the regular season. If nothing goes wrong at Purdue, Kevin, they could be bowl eligible next year or this season. But for Kyle McCord, it still is a learning process. Like he's done things, he's accomplished things. He won on the road and led a game-winning drive at Notre Dame, and that's that continues to look like a very, very good win for Ohio State. The second half against Maryland looked pretty darn good, looked pretty consistent. And he still has Marvin Harrison out there. And Tony's not here, so I'm going to say something nice about Tony. Tremendous tweet from Tony Gerdeman. He said I think this was on the after the 2nd and 33 where they converted because you have Marvin Harrison out there. Tony with a very nice way to say that Marvin Harrison is a cheat code. He said up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, select Marv. And I was
Contra
like,
agrees.
Yes, that was all you 80s kids out there know what that is. Boy, when you have a Marvin Harrison out there, you convert a 2nd and 33 and it looks rather effortless. I would have questions as to how it's 2nd and 33 and Maryland's not going. What do you think they're going to do? Do you think they're going to throw that to the best guy on the field? Feels like that might be a thing you do, but he was in single coverage, made a nice play. Next play, Kyle McCord, not a great throw. Harrison goes way up, high points, gets it, makes another nice play. I mean, it was just... He finished the game with 15 targets, 8 catches, 163 yards, averaging 20.4 yards per reception, 1 touchdown. He had to score it twice. He scored the touchdown. It came back on a motion penalty, and he scored virtually the same touchdown again on the same play. I know it's not effortless, but it looks so effortless. And, having him on the team, that feels like it's a little bit of a shortcut that maybe gets you around some of the issues.
There were times earlier in the season where Marvin wasn't getting targeted enough. And 15, not to take something from the other show, but is that not enough? I mean, when you have Marv out there, is that not enough targets for him, especially down the stretch? Emeka Egbuka gets banged up, goes to the injury tent. We'll know more on his status, maybe, how they are about injuries, but we'll know more about that as the week goes on. Marv is just so good at his game that he raises the level of everybody around him. I think they just need to let him spend a week in the offensive line room, and then maybe we'll have a different song and dance here, and we can tell you where to start booking tickets to the postseason. But for now, Kyle certainly has that familiarity, that comfortability with Marvin, but not everything that Kyle threw was on the money at this point. And Marvin has a wide catch radius, but a few of these were in nobody's catch radius.
Yeah, and he looked a little off, and I
rumors about an ankle as well. That he had a little extra tape and everything else.
Yeah, he was taped up maybe a little more than normal. It looked like on his ankles, and just. If you wanted to say it was ankles, there were balls that just sort of floated in a way that just were maybe he can't quite push off the way he normally would. He can't, you think of a quarterback and everyone talks about their arm. You're not just throwing with your arm. That is, you are using your legs, you're using your feet.
When you're up to bat, you don't just sit there and use your arms unless you're in a beer league softball game.
Yeah, if your ankle was a little banged up, a little tender, maybe you don't get quite as much zip on the ball downfield. And there were a couple balls that just sort of floated that don't normally float for him.
The long one to Harrison in the first half, the one to Fleming in the second half going towards the north end. Both of those 99 out of 100 times are touchdowns in themselves. Neither of those ended up being touchdowns. Both times Marvin had to wait for his throw, and Julian had to slide around a little bit to get that one.
Yeah, but you have 37-yarder to Julian Fleming down inside the 5. That ended up being a touchdown a couple plays later, and then the long one to Cade Stover in the second half, where it felt like he sort of found his footing, and maybe the coaching staff sort of figured out what Maryland was trying to do, because you ended up with there were some guys who were just wide open, just straight up just busts in the secondary, and that's going to happen. Everyone's going to say, well, that doesn't count. It was a bust. And busts are going to happen in college. That happens.
A lot of times you can force busts.
Yes. Yeah, you can scheme guys open, too. So, it can be the talent of the receivers.
Ask Tough Borland about that.
Yeah. You can. That play was not Tough Borland's fault, which I know you know.
I know. But we're talking about scheme.
Yeah. I just feel like that's always worth mentioning. It was great, but it was solid, and it's just I think there's people who are very upset about the game because of how it looked in the first half, and then you look at where they are in this schedule right now, and they're 5 games in. They've probably cleared 2 of their 5 toughest hurdles in Notre Dame, which is somewhere in the top 3 probably, and Maryland, which is either 4 or maybe 5 behind Wisconsin. So you're now through 40% of your 5 toughest games, basically half of your season. You're undefeated. You just beat your 4th or 5th toughest opponent by 20 points at home. But I don't, and the defense has looked fantastic, but I don't know that people are necessarily thrilled, which I get because they're not where they need to be, but they don't have to be there just yet.
Well, and the thing is that for so many years under Urban Meyer, under Ryan Day, it's been offense. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there was the year with Jeff Hafley as defensive coordinator where that defense was right there too, but it was there as a relative of the offense, and the offense isn't there yet. So Ohio State goes into this game allowing 8.5 points per game, allowing 17. It's going to go up a little bit, but we're still talking probably coming out of the weekend a top 5, top 7 scoring defense out there based on all of that. People are going to sit there and say, well, you don't know what Penn State's going to do. You don't know what Michigan's going to do. I mean, I'm assuming that one of the teams that you're putting in the top 5 games is going to be going to Wisconsin. We don't know what we don't know about Wisconsin. They look a little different every week. So I think there's a lot to take out of this to where you should have some guarded optimism. But I think you need to also have 90% of your body in the realist camp that we still are not seeing a complete product by any stretch of the imagination, and the offense is going to have to carry its share of the water here soon.
Yeah, undoubtedly, this is still a work in progress, and they do. Penn State is coming, but Penn State's coming in 2 weeks, and you've got Purdue up next, and so that is not a place where Ohio State has always had tremendous success playing at Ross-Ade Stadium, but it's a game that they should win. They're going to be heavily favored to win that game. And then Penn State comes in, and Penn State I don't think has been challenged yet this season in a way that Ohio State has. So, you're going to say, people are going to look at that and say, oh, well, Penn State hasn't struggled the way Ohio State has. Well, Penn State didn't go to Notre Dame. Penn State, their big out-of-conference game was West Virginia, and it's like, that's fine. West Virginia's been decent this year, but they're not a top 10 type team. So
no.
Yeah. So just there'll be plenty of stuff to talk about this week, as you can. The offensive line is going to be a whole narrative this week. Kyle McCord will be a whole narrative this week. The defense and how good is the defense is going to be a whole narrative this week. But lots of fun stuff to talk about. We will have full coverage of all the usual stuff this week. Ryan Day press conference, player press conferences, all of that stuff at BuckeyeHuddle.com, and of course at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. So thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.